same revenues. So we need to rebalance that.
Okay, thank you. Right, I'm going to open it up to the other members. Now, I think Chris is the most time limited, and then I'm going to come to Christian, who's the second most. So, Chris Loder.
Yeah, thank you. Morning, Steve. Morning, Tim. Good to see you both. Steve, in my questions earlier, I focused on the talks, so in that world, so I'm going to put most of my questions are going to be to you. Could you just tell us about your specific role in all of this? Are you leading the negotiations on behalf of all the train operators, or are you doing another sort of role?
So I'm leading the negotiations on behalf of the train operators. But again, just to be 100% clear, I'm looking to try and build a framework that then has to be consulted in each train operating company with the local trade union representatives at those businesses. So what we're working with RMT and hopefully with ASLEV is how do we build a framework that is acceptable to the RMT senior people and also to us as the RDG, the train operating representatives, that we can then hand down to train operating.
Is that feasible, though? Given, I mean, I think we've got 15 operators, 16 if you count the Island Line. You know, is it actually feasible that you can agree a framework and then, you know, sort of go to each TOC? I think you're suggesting to say you have a detailed negotiation.
Yeah, we do believe it is feasible. You know, and we've spoken to RMT about this to make sure that we work together, because if we don't think it's feasible, then we just have to hand it back to the train operating companies.
The RMT has declared dispute based on your discussions at RDG level, not at top level. Is that correct?
No, it's top level because they have to ballot the individual TOC.
Yes. All the TOCs. Okay, right. Thank you. The work that you've been working on, I think, the Rail Industry Recovery Group has been going on for 18 months plus. I understand that's a collective, a joint work stream. Why has that taken so long to get to this point?
I think it's taken so long that we've had an industry that's been changing round about us through this last 18 months, 2 years, as we've seen. We have had a lot of intense discussions with the General Secretaries and trying to approach with them areas of where we believe that modernisation of the industry could help the industry, back to my comments earlier to the Chair, about how do we make sure that we carry out modernisation now that protects the industry for the future. The General Secretaries have engaged with us. They created the Enabling Framework Agreement that was sent out to the industry, and it laid out a number of the areas that we're now discussing in more detail. We have seen slowing down of engagement at certain levels, and we are now, because we are obviously
at the unions, Steve, or is that on the part of government or Fox, or?
I think it's predominantly been a mix of people getting distracted. We had the Omicron variant that arrived in the middle of all this as well. So again, when we've been trying to get a benchmark to give the trade unions an understanding of how much the industry is how much the industry's revenue is no longer resourcing the cost base, those numbers have moved about quite considerably. We then got to an agreement of the 2 billion figure that we worked with Treasury to try and get an understanding of those figures. And between Network Rail and the train operating companies, we've each got a specific task, and we've shared that task with the trade unions.
So, I mean, some critics would say that the fact that this has been drawn out for so long has contributed to this sort of flare-up in industrial relations difficulty. Would you accept that? And if not, why would you say not?
I think why the flare-up has happened has been the economic crisis. None of us seen inflation move to a position that it had moved to. The discussions were ongoing. We were getting closer to try and put into where we now currently are. The inflation pressures that would put on our staff, RMT's members, have escalated the RMT and ASLEV's response of moving towards industrial action and greater demands from what we can fund.
Did you have an original timeline that you were working to the recovery group?
Yes.
What was that timeline?
We would have been hoping to conclude things before the April pay discussions. That was the kind of area.
You basically had a 15-month roughly timeline which you wanted to conclude. Okay. And so, in effect, we see this has been drawn out, and now it's concluded into to a dispute at the moment. Okay. Right. Thank you. Could I just ask you, high level? We've had lots of different versions of events about passenger journeys and revenue and so on. Could you just put the record straight in your role to tell us what exactly has happened to passenger journeys and separately to revenue for the industry, for the passenger industry, sort of like now, broadly speaking, compared to before the pandemic?
If you take the pandemic, approximately, these figures will not be 100%, but approximately 10 billion of revenue. Revenue dropped down to 5% at certain times.
But right now, we need it. What is it now?
So right now, sorry, to bring it back to now, we are approximately 75% of revenue. That varies in different businesses. Obviously, if you're a heavy commuter talk, you're
Overall,
slightly less.
75%.
But approximately 75% of
And
revenue.
the commuter talks have been hurt much more by this.
Yes.
Roughly an average commuter talk, what would you say is its passenger?
Probably commuter talks 67 to about 70%. We're seeing some operators recovering.
Long
to.
distance?
Long distance, again, about 80%.
80%. Yeah, okay. And are we seeing a bounce back in particular on Sundays and weekends more than the other days in the week?
Yeah, very much so, yes.
With Sundays particularly?
Saturdays and Sundays. Friday, Saturday and Sunday have been very
for
high
those
leisure journeys.
Those train operators where Sundays are not within the working week, would you agree that there is a clear disparity between passenger demands and terms and conditions framework of employment conditions are in order to allow that to grow and continue?
That's correct. And so where we have the voluntary element, as customer numbers have come back, we are far more exposed to being able to offer a consistent timetable. And we've seen it in a number of train operating businesses where cancellations on a Sunday are far greater than they are any other day of the week. And again, this is true to the voluntary element of where people just don't make themselves available because of, whatever the reason may be. What we've been talking to the trade union is how do we get this voluntary element removed and put it in as part of if I can say, a consolidated part of the working week for people that they have to pick up their Sunday turn.
Thank you. I just have two final, fairly short questions. You'll hear both of the early panel members use the word scab. I've never heard anyone in the train operating management world use that term. Do you believe that when that term is used, employees who are involved with this are subject in some way to intimidation or can be as a result of that behaviour?
They can be, and it is unacceptable. And both as train operating companies and Network Rail, we have quite clear policies in place of where we find any form of intimidation. We have seen it through other disputes of where we will take action against individuals should there any behaviours like that.
I'll ask Tim this question in just a minute as well, but could you just tell us the extent of which you may see intimidation during strike action as a result of a dispute?
So there is, in some cases, there is verbal, face-to-face, a lot of social media intimidation has been put out, and, if you pardon this pun, but writing on the bathroom wall type behaviour as well. In mess rooms, people writing discriminatory things against individuals.
Do we still see physical?
Less so. Now, we haven't, certainly not in the train operating companies that I'm aware of, have we seen any physical assaults or anything like that at this moment in time. Verbal, yes, but not physical that I'm aware of. Thank
you. Tim, could I just ask you that question as well?
Yeah, and I think this is a really unacceptable thing, isn't it? You've actually heard from all the trade unions that and from Steve that the negotiations have been carried out in a dignified way. I think that's essential. We must carry ourselves like that. We've made that point really clear ahead of the strikes that whilst there might be difference of opinions, we have to respect one another and for individual views. But sadly, yes, there were examples of either on picket lines, individuals getting carried away, getting too excited, getting too rowdy with people that were coming into work. and on one occasion, I'm particularly aware of one of my senior managers was abused by strikers. Bizarrely, and a week later, they apologised.
Is that verbal abuse?
Yeah, but very, very, very powerful verbal abuse. That same striker then a few days later then apologised to that individual, which doesn't make it okay, but it does illustrate just how some of the challenges that people have been faced with. But there have been examples of some practices of people doing things that are completely unacceptable, and I think we've got to make sure that actually where Mick Whelan was coming from in terms of scabs and what have you, that's not at all helpful in terms of how we can take this industry forward.
Could I just ask, I'll come to you, Steve, on this in a minute, do you accept scab as a term that is acceptable to be used in your organisation?
I'll do it in my...
Can I ask you first that one, sorry?
No, I don't. I think it's got no place for respectful dialogue.
Would someone likely be subject to disciplinary measures if they intimidated someone using that?
If we have evidence that someone's been intimidated, then
exhausted.
Steve, I'll just ask you those fine.
In our eyes, it's an unacceptable terminology to be used against another individual, and we would take disciplinary action.
And last one, and then I'm handing back, ticket offices. You heard me ask the RMT about what they had to say about ticket offices a little while ago. After a little bit of scouting around, they said then that the list came from Transport Focus. Is it accurate that 1,000 ticket offices are set for closure? The list of which they circulated, which I'm not sure not, but I assume you would have done. Is that accurate?
So it's not accurate in terms of we have not agreed to close any ticket office at this moment in time.